Why hello there, welcome back to my channel, Food with Ben. This week in preparation of celebrating 4th of July, I thought I would make some good dishes that people would like to eat during the holidays. A classic dish that I associate with the holidays is mac and cheese. My family doesn't really eat it on a regular, and we usually only eat it during the holidays. Let's explore how to make this iconic dish in two different ways. One that is a quick 15-minute dish that you can do any day, and another one that is about an hour that you can still do any day but requires a little bit more prep. Both are fantastic recipes, and you can actually follow how to do them through Binging with Babish episode, which I'll have linked down below. I was inspired by him doing this recipe a couple weeks ago, and I thought, why not try this out myself? To be honest, I did mess up quite a few times when making this recipe, but it's okay because that's part of learning. And that's also why I started doing this, because I personally think it's always good to try out and try to help people understand what mistakes they can fall in. This week's fun fact is about the blue box that we know and love when we think of mac and cheese. It was actually created during the Great Depression and has been part of the modern day college diet. So let's see if this 15-minute recipe from the amazing food person J. Kenzie Lopez Alt can replace that box stuff for us. For this recipe, you need 6 ounces of pasta, 6 ounces of freshly shredded cheese, and 6 ounces of evaporated milk. If you want to scale this up, just have equal ratios of all these as you do this. If you don't have a grater, just cut up the cheese into thinly sliced so it can melt evenly, but I would definitely recommend having a grater because it just makes the process overall easier and it definitely melts a lot quicker. For this recipe, you just need to put in your pasta of choice in the pan and add enough cold water to cover. Cook it until it's al dente or most of the water is evaporated. This should take you about 6 minutes. A mistake I made was I added too much water into this, so it made the dish a little bit more liquidy and it also took the water to evaporate a lot longer than I wanted it to. But a way that I fixed this was at the end I just cooked it for a little bit longer. But after the water is mostly gone, add in your evaporated milk and bring it to a boil. Then lower the heat and add in the cheese, mix it thoroughly and vigorously until it combines. I would honestly recommend a pan with higher walls than I had because it's a lot easier to do, or just use a pot. If you don't like the thickness of your macaroni, you can honestly just let it cook on low for a couple minutes and it should make it a little bit thicker, and that's what I did. After you do that, don't forget to add some salt and pepper to your tasting, and now it's ready to eat. Let's start off with the texture of the dish. It is creamy, but there is a little bit of grittiness to it. The reason behind that, I believe, is because I melted the cheese a little bit too fast. So I would actually recommend taking the dish off the heat and then mixing it in. If you need more heat, put it back on the heat and mix it through. Another way to help with the grittiness is also adding cheese in small portion at a time so you make sure it melts evenly and not as fast at once. That's it for mainly the texture. It's still really good in terms of texture. You have to be careful not to melt it too fast or it will cause the grittiness. But the taste was another thing. So I think mine tasted a little bit bland for me, and so I added a little bit more salt when I was eating this, but also I think the type of cheese really does matter. So the more flavorful the cheese, the deeper the flavor you'll get. So simply changing out and experimenting with cheese would really help overall make the mac and cheese taste better. But overall, still a really simple and enjoyable dish to eat. So I added in some sausage to this meal because I thought it would taste really good, but also because that's what I used to do as a kid. My older sister used to make the box stuff for us and add in broccoli and sausage and made it a more complete meal for me and my second sister, and it was great. It was wonderful and it reminds me of her. So I bet she would love the recipe now on her lazy days that she doesn't want to cook, so I'm excited to share this recipe with her. But now to the more complex recipe, the one with the white sauce or the bechamel. I like how the food blog, the ChunkyChef, broke it down into these steps. Cooking and draining the pasta, making the white sauce, add the cheese, combine the sauce and the pasta together, and bake in another pan. All these recipes are about the same when you look them up. You need about a pound of pasta, half a cup of butter, 4 cups of milk, a half cup of flour, a pound to a pound and a half of cheese, and if you want to, panko and parmesan if you want a crispy top. Let's get started. Melt the butter until the bubble subsides, add in the flour, and whisk until it's golden, incorporated. I think I messed up a little bit right here because when I was adding in the flour, I think the temperature was too high and it browned a lot quicker. So you can honestly lower the temperature when you add in the flour. So when you add in your first chunk of milk, you want to add it in slowly. Binging with Babish recommends adding half a cup at a time, while Gordon Ramsay recommends adding a third of your milk in total at a time. Either way, it's gonna cause your mixture, your flour butter mixture, to kind of seize up and become this dough-like texture. It's gonna really become more like Play-Doh, and that's okay. You just want to keep whisking it and adding in milk slowly at a time until all of it's incorporated, and cook out the flour. So when you add in the second chunk of milk, this is also a really crucial point because this is the point where you go from that little Play-Doh-like texture to a more smooth, thicker paste to a liquid state. And what you have to do to make sure that you get all that flour and make sure it's as smooth as possible is to make sure you get the edges and whisk constantly and mix it constantly. I didn't really do a good job of doing the edges, and so I had extra flour at the end. The last third is just so that you can make it into a thinner sauce, and you want to make sure all the flour is incorporated. So that's the last bit of the milk is meant for that. To be honest, the best thing you can do is take your time on doing this. Patience will be rewarded. Then you want to lower the heat to about a medium to medium high so it can thicken depending on what dish you're making. We don't need it too thick because we're going to add in that cheese. To finish off this recipe, you want to add salt and pepper, and depending on who's talking, you might want to add more. So Gordon Ramsay and Bon Appetit both suggest adding nutmeg. I have some nutmeg left over, so I grated that in. Babish recommends adding in that mustard. I think he said mustard seed, so you can also do that too. But after that, you have the basics of a bechamel sauce, a really great sauce that you can use in multiple ways. The Bon Appetit article about this does talk about the different ways and a great sauce to learn. For us to make this stewing cheese sauce, just add in some cheese. I use a half a pound of cheddar and half a pound of white cheddar, but honestly, you can use whatever cheese you want. So the way I try to make this was I try to pour the bechamel sauce into a bowl with the cheese and try to melt it inside of there to control the temperature. But I don't think my bechamel was hot enough for me to actually really do that, and the cheese weren't really grated well, so it didn't melt as evenly. So that was a mistake I made. What I should have done probably was put the cheese inside the pot and melt it and then take it off if it was getting too hot, and then put it back on the heat and keep melting it as it go on. Another thing that you can do is also change the type of cheese. I think that really does matter how quickly it melts, but it's okay if it doesn't melt all the way like mine, because you still are going to bake it. You're just going to have pockets of cheesy bits. So once the sauce is done, you honestly just need to combine the pasta and the sauce together until all of it's coated. Put it in the pan and bake it. Some people say you should only put half of it in and then throw in some cheese if you want it extra cheesy. I didn't care too much because I honestly didn't have enough cheese. But if you want some extra texture, what I would recommend is adding panko and Parmesan on top. So you would mix the panko and Parmesan to whatever ratios you want and then spread it on top and bake it. I actually baked mine at the temperature at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 40 minutes. Halfway through, I turned it around so it could cook evenly. This is the finished product, and I like the nice charring on the edge because it baked for so long, but also the panko Parmesan mixture also browned it very nicely too. Even though I messed up a lot on the sauce and the cheese melting, I still think it came out to pretty good mac and cheese. It wasn't gritty and it wasn't like full of flour in it. You can't really taste it at all actually. But there were definitely pockets of cheese, but it was like a nice surprise, so it didn't really matter too much. If you really wanted it to be more cheesy, you can definitely add another half pound of cheese. If you want it to be more creamy, you can follow Babish's recipe, and he has a really great melty cheese. I think that will really change the flavor and also change the texture overall. But I think adding texture that I liked was the panko and parmesan mixture, and you can really taste the parmesan when you mix the panko on top, and it tastes great. I really love it, and I think it goes well for the next potluck dish or dinner party that you have. It's not that hard to make, but you do have to be patient when you're making this. But if you're like me and you're really lazy sometimes, that 15-minute recipe works really well, tastes fantastic, and you can just do it really quickly for dinner if you're super lazy one night. With that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. You should comment down below what type of food do you eat at family potlucks or potlucks in general. Also comment down below which one you would make, the 15-minute one or the 1 hour one. Don't forget to give this a like and subscribe, because next week we're going to do ribs and ice cream. You can also follow me on Instagram at foodwbin and on Twitter on foodwbin. Bye y'all.